Fran Lab. I hate talking about this. I really, really hate talking about this, but I had mentioned earlier in the year that this was gonna happen, and it's happened. But last Thursday, the Supreme Court came down and made the judgment that the administration can follow through with redacting all changes that have been made to government IDs for trans people, intersex people, people who've had their birth certificates amended, passports and government-issued identification will now be turned back to at-birth status, regardless of anything. There's no caveats. In fact, a lower court had ruled that they couldn't do that, and so this was like 10 months, because it happened like in February. And the lower court said, whoa, we got to put the brakes on that. Well, the Supreme Court, as they've done with all the other administration's requests, took it upon themselves to overrule that and said that the Supreme Court stayed that ruling, allowing the executive order that was made like in February to go into effect. In a brief, unsigned decision, the court said, the displaying passport holder's sex at birth no more offends the equal protection principles than displaying their country of birth. And interesting, in both cases, the government was merely addressing the historical fact without subjecting anyone to different treatment. That's their argument. As for the people the decision would affect, trans and non-binary people, and of course intersex people, which aren't even mentioned in this, the court did not see fit to even mention them. So the whole reason for the ruling, displacing and disappearing people who are not one or the other, or had their birth certificates amended, not even mentioned in the decision. So it's basically ruling against people like me and others without even mentioning us in the decision. And this article, which is written by M. Gesson, which is I'm assuming a pen name because the person describes that they have to remain anonymous. I just thought it's interesting. They said if the new rule weakens passports' manifest function, it greatly strengthens their other function, which is to be a tool of enforcing social hierarchy, which is the whole point of this op-ed about how Supreme Court's gender passport ruling isn't about identification. It's about who gets to be in power and who decides who's important and who gets to be in society. This is what I talked about back in February. So I knew all this was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. But this isn't even the end of it. That's the thing. I said in February, they've got to go all the way. Just getting rid of people like me on paper, getting rid of our federal identification has been retrograded to birth. So now I have an amended birth certificate. This is why it's not over, because there are other cases have to come in. They're going to push it further because in the United States we have a federal government and we have state government. And the president can only determine federal mandates. This isn't technically a law because this was an executive order. Congress had nothing to do with this. It's an executive order, but it still stands as, it's technically not a law, but it is a law. That doesn't affect states, and so the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth, issued me an amended birth certificate. So in the Commonwealth, I still have proper identification, but on the federal level, everything has been wound back to the guy that assigned it, at birth, and so everybody who's like me or intersex people that are assigned one sex at birth and then get that amended because they either have surgery or they get reassessed. It's very complicated, which is why this should not be let up to the government to decide sex and gender. It's got to be left up to doctors and professionals, but of course they've been taken out of the loop. Now the Supreme Court has judged on it. And so the consequences for Americans who travel abroad can be dire, is what the article says. And this is the thing. People on the right side will say, well, what's the problem? Everything's as it should be. Your passport says guy, so it says male. So it's like, you're a male, so what's the problem? Just, you're not being punished. Just get in a plane, travel anywhere you want. What's the big whoop? Well, the problem is that when you land in another country, and you're clearly not a male, and your passport says male, You get taken aside, you get maybe strip searched, you might get arrested, and depending on where you land or where you are, you might be, you might be incarcerated, or you might be deported. You might not be let into the country. You're certainly going to be harassed, and that's part of the thing. The cruelty is the whole point. There's no reason to take away a person's identification that's been amended. There's no reason for this except to punish. It's the only reason. It's cruelty. The cruelty is the point. In other countries, that a person's passport is often checked all the time at hotels, when entering administrative buildings, and simply walking on the street. You can be stopped by police, and you're in another country. You have to give your passport. Just because a cop stops you, give your passport to some random cop in some other country. They look at your passport, they said, it says male, and all of a sudden now you're at the police station. Now you're getting strip searched. Now you're getting cavity searched. Now you're in a jail cell. And maybe you don't speak the language. Maybe if you're a tourist, I would never do that, but if maybe you're a tourist, you don't speak the language, and you're a foreigner who doesn't speak the language, and now you're incarcerated. And they take your phone and your passport. All because of this, And it says that in some countries, there's segregation. Some airports have sex-designated security lines, and some train lines operate sex-segregated cars. And again, how are you going to travel? The whole idea is to deny a trans person or an intersex person from blending in, from being part of society. That's the whole point. The point is to expose the aberrant person, to make them get punished, to make them suffer, to punish them for things that they have done. The whole point is the cruelty. But it's not the end. This is not the end, because it can't be the end, because as I said, I've got an amended birth certificate, My birth certificate says female, and on my state ID, it's female. It's always going to be female on my state ID. It's just my passport isn't going to say that because of this ruling. So I can't travel abroad anymore. I can't travel internationally. I technically can't travel a lot within the country because the mandate for bathrooms is on the interstate highway system. Rest stops, I'm not allowed to use the women's room in any federal highway rest stop, the interstate highway system, which is coast to coast. Can't use those bathrooms, and not even to wash my hands. And airports, can't use restrooms in airports. And it's a vague thing about whether or not you can use the bathrooms on trains. Well, trains are unisex bathrooms, so it doesn't affect that. But the whole idea that there aren't unisex bathrooms everywhere is just part of the reason that you get restricted. In America, we love the segregation thing still. But yeah, so it's not over. I said it in February that they got to go all the way. They got this win, so they're going to take away our passports. But that's not the end of it, because they got to disappear us altogether. And the only way you're going to do that is they got to pass a law, or they have to make a federal mandate. There's got to be some executive order to make it illegal to be trans anywhere in society. So they got to take it to the next level. They got to criminalize the whole idea of not conforming, whatever that could possibly mean. The article, it's I'm not going to read the whole article, but they do raise the point that if you want to get a perspective of what this is like for a trans person, they're speaking to cis males, particularly males, because they figure a lot of females probably understand about harassment, but if you're a regular guy, you probably don't have the experience. But I asked my non-trans readers of this column to imagine having to wear a dress and makeup and act as the opposite gender every time that they travel. So yes, that's what this is about. The idea that the mandate is requiring that you do drag, that you impersonate the opposite sex when you travel, if you don't want to be arrested, and you got to do it good. So you really got to pass. You got to do the whole Wendy Carlos fake beard and sideburns to do the public appearance thing. It's like going back to like 20th century television shows. It's like, we need our gay men to be flaming and obviously gay. You can't be like covertly gay. Like they want everything to be like stereotypical caricatures and completely out in the open and exposed. I remember like 20 years ago when I first got outed, the rage some people were saying, like on public forums, demanding that it should be against the law for me, saying that it should be against the law for you to say anything without first saying that you're trans. Like that's gonna be the first thing out of your mouth every time that you make any kind of public statement. You gotta say you're trans, and then you gotta stop fooling people. And the idea being that if you don't have it tattooed on your face, I am trans, have the big trans tattooed on your forehead, to let people know right away that you're trans, that you're baiting them into getting attracted to you, and you're basically turning people gay involuntarily, that it's an incel thing, that you're involuntarily turning people gay by making them attracted to you. This is the argument 20 years ago. That you're making people attracted to you and forcing them to become gay. That was what was said before, and that's come around to this, the idea that you got to wear it on your shirt. This shirt is, I'm trans, so please don't be attracted to me. I'm trans, please, beat me up now. Please keep me from going to the bathroom. Please, harass me now. Give me what I deserve. That's what all this is about. But it's not over. Mark my words, it's not over. They've gotten the Supreme Court, but it's not enough, because that's going to go cold. That's going to go cold. They got their victory. They're going to reverse the passports. That's going to go cold in weeks. They've got to bring it back. So how are they going to amp it up for next year? How are they going to amp up against trans people for next year? You tell me. What's the next step? It's like, but now even if you get the surgery, the American government is not going to recognize that surgery. Even if you get your birth certificate amended after that, the federal government is going to use your original birth certificate. Your amended birth certificate is of no use to the federal government. States' rights be damned. The federal government has its own ideas about you. So now, as an American, I exist in two worlds. I exist in the world of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where I'm one person with one set of documentation, and the world of the United States federal government, where I'm a completely different person with a completely different set of documents, and the two apparently will never overlap. But we can't leave the country anymore. But of course conservatives will say, there's no one keeping you from leaving the country. Just use your passport, Fran. Why gotta be a snowflake? Use your passport. It says man on there, but yeah, you're a man, so, just, hey. It's your fault if you don't look like a man. It's your fault if you don't sound like a man. Oh, but you do sound like a man. I'm sorry, Fran. You do look like a man. You do sound like a man. You're clearly a man. Just cut your hair. Be a man. You gotta make up your mind about that. Why can't the trolls make up their mind? Am I fooling you, or am I clearly a man?
It's 1:30 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Roboclock. Mr. Roboclock is clearly a dude. That's some of the bad news. And I wish I didn't have to tell you about it. But that's the way it is. Carrie says, forcing people to out themselves. Well, yes, the federal government is doing the outing for you. Yep, cruelty is the point. The cruelty is the whole point, bottom line. There's no reason for the U.S. government to do this. It's not a U.S. security issue. There's no reason for it except for cruelty. And, the Catholic majority on the Supreme Court, there's a lot of Catholicism involved in the decision, as many of the social decisions that this court has made. There's a lot of Catholic, philosophy in that. Do I have a passport now? Well, yeah, I've got my passport. It's not going to be valid anymore. I don't know. So the ruling is very nonspecific, and in the administration is nonspecific. They've ruled that basically that they can, rescind all of the identification that's been given to people who have amended their identification, but they're being very vague. They haven't given any mandate about how it's going to unroll. Some people got issued new passports. Some did not. I haven't been given a new passport, but they really wouldn't know how to do that, because it's not like I have an account with the administration. I don't think, well, I guess they'd have to go to the IRS to get my address, but it's not like I'm in contact with them. And, it would require that states have to coordinate with the federal government. There's really no system set up to do this because it's never been done before. There's never been this thing where they've rescinded massive amounts of passports, obviously with thousands or tens of thousands of identifications. It's never been done before, but it would require the cooperation of states, which they might not get from many states. I doubt they'd get it from Pennsylvania. But there's no clear guidelines. They've given no directives about what they're going to do or how they're going to do it. They've just basically been given the right to do it. Like I said, some people did have new passports sent to them. Some people did not. I still have my original passport, but when it expires, the bottom line is what they're going to do is that, when my passport expires, you'd have to renew it. They might just seize on the renewal process itself to do the filtering. They might not even bother for most people to issue a new passport. They probably just wait for the renewal process. But this is the thing, it's like, how does the federal government even know that I have an amended birth certificate? Because they would have never saw the original one because it would have been too long ago. They would have to put out a mandate to states to send documents on every citizen. They would basically have to demand all states give up records of anyone who's ever amended their identification, and they'd basically have to have lists. But in order to do that, they'd have to depend on the cooperation of all states, which they wouldn't get. So again, I don't know how they're going to enforce this. It would require another level of authoritarianism to get the job done, which is what they're going to have to do. Because if they don't get everyone to cooperate, if they don't get people to voluntarily give up their identification, if they don't get all the states to voluntarily give up all the records of everyone who ever lived in their state is still alive, then it would require another level of authoritarianism to get the job done. So we'll just have to see. The Supreme Court has given them the power and authority to do it, but they're going to have to, issue some other executive order to get the authority to actually implement it, is my feeling. So we haven't seen the end of it. It's not the end of it. More authoritarianism to come. For you and me. Carrie says, thinking it's better to earn the rights and lose than never earn the rights in the first place. Well, psychologically, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because it was in a book I was reading about a month ago about, when you get older, anxiety, fear, depression, right? And they said that the worst thing that a person can experience, in fact, like the way you break a person, right? This is people who deal in psychological warfare, and particularly interrogation, know this very well. The way you can hurt a person the most is to give them hope and then take it away. Show them a path to hope, or show them that things are going to get better, and then before they get there, take it away. It's worse than not having any hope at all. A dream deferred or a promise rescinded is more hurtful, it's more crushing, it's more soul-crushing than ever having any hope at all. So no, the truth is, gaining a right and then having it stripped from you is worse than never having earned it in the first place. Because if you never earn the right to the first place, you know where you stand. There's a hopelessness, and there's hopelessness, and then there's hopelessness, and there's another level of hopelessness. And it's one thing to be in line with your reality, but when you fight for something, for change, you get that change, you see the hope of living a better life, and then you have that change purposefully taken away, stripped from you. Like in my case, the freedom to travel. Everything that I went through, all the decades that I fought to get the right to be able to have the freedom to travel. I didn't even bother to get a passport for decades, I realized, because the process of getting a passport, you had give all these documents to the federal government. It was like a big hoop to do. And especially with an amended birth certificate and everything, it's like I didn't want to rattle the cage. I didn't want to bring attention to myself, right? I went for a long time, but when I finally went and did that, put everything on the table, sent all my documents to Washington to get the passport, and I got the passport, I was elated. I was like, wow, it's like it's like legitimacy. And I wrote about that decades ago, about legitimacy. The struggle for legitimacy for trans people. I wrote that original essay decades ago, The Fight for Legitimacy. And getting my federal status revoked, it's like all that work I did, all that hope that I had, all that stuff stripped away, taken away. Why? For cruelty's sake, just so that it would hurt a little bit. So does that hurt more than never being granted the right to begin with? Yeah, it does. And saying that just makes the MAGA people froth. It's like, oh, so sweet. Yes. Oh, it hurts more. Oh, yes. It's just I can feel their joy. It's like there's some kind of, they're like a succubus, you know? They're just feeding off of the cruelty. It's like the cruelty is the whole thing. It's like ambrosia. Cruelty is ambrosia. And they don't get it. That's the thing. They don't get it. They really think that they're God's chosen people. They think that it's like there's God and Christ and the president in the same painting, and they feel so certain of their certainty that the idea that they feed off the cruelty, they just don't even realize. And if you take them to task that they're feeding off the cruelty, of course they'll explode at you. But they just don't realize that they're sustaining themselves on the cruelty of their own franchise. That they can't get enough of it. It's literally ambrosia. There isn't enough cruelty to be generated to sate them. So they need more. MAGA world runs on hatred, cruelty, vindictiveness, victimization. They've got to be the underdog. They've got to be put up against. They've got to be fighting everything, everyone. It's guy fight, 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 fight. It can't ever be over. They can't ever have won. That's the thing. So, you know, they spent $250 million in anti-trans ads the last election cycle. $250 million against just people like me, a handful of people. And it's not enough. It's still not enough. They got the Supreme Court to give them full authority to do whatever they want with us, and it's not enough. They're going to have to amp it up. What will be the next step? I said in February what that would be. Final solution. Because they can take away our passports, but you know what? We're not gone yet. We're not totally gone yet. How can you make trans people totally gone? Because you're still going to see them. You're still going to see them. You can punish them. You can keep them out of the bathrooms. You can keep them out of the airports. You can keep them from traveling to other countries. You can do all that. But they're still going to be around. You're still going to see trans people. They're still going to exist. Now what are you going to do? You haven't gotten rid of them yet. It's going to bother you. What are you going to do about that? That's what we're going to find out next year. Gotta amp it up, kids. Take it to the next level. Final solution. Still here. In the lab. That's where I work. In the lab. Go berserk. In my lab. That's where I work. knows what you're watching. Friend love, it's what I'm doing. Working at the bench again.